You know that list of skills you've got? The one you swear you'll get to someday? What if someday could be like next month? Today, we're going to crack open Josh Kaufman's The First 20 Hours, a playbook for blasting through that really annoying part of learning something new. Seriously, just take a second. What's that one thing for you? Is it playing the guitar? Finally learning how to code? Okay, got it? Hold on to that thought, because we're about to see how it's way more achievable than you think. So, every single new skill has this thing Kaufman calls the frustration barrier. You know the one. It's that awkward beginning phase where you just feel completely clumsy and incompetent. Let's be real, it's not fun, and it's pretty much the main reason most of us quit before we even get going. It's this emotional wall you just slam into. And that frustration, it gets 1,000 times worse because of this massive idea that's been drilled into our heads, the 10,000-hour rule. Malcolm Gladwell made it famous, and it's this notion that to be a true expert at anything, you need to sink in a mind-boggling amount of time. It's so intimidating, it makes even starting a new hobby feel kind of hopeless. I mean, let's just put that number in perspective for a second. 10 years. If you have a job, a family, a life, that number is it's a motivation killer. Who has an entire decade to get good at something? But here's the absolute key, the big insight. What if the goal isn't to become a world-class master? What if the goal is just to be good enough that you actually enjoy doing it? This is where we completely change the conversation about that 10,000-hour rule. See, the 10,000-hour rule? That's about being an elite, top-tier performer. Rapid skill acquisition is totally different. It's about putting in just 20 hours to get over that initial frustration barrier so the thing you're learning becomes fun and rewarding. It's not about being the best, it's about being competent enough to have a good time. And what's really cool is that there's science behind this. This is what's called the learning curve, or the power law of practice. And what it shows is that you make your biggest leaps in skill right at the very beginning. The progress you make in those first 20 hours is just astronomically bigger than the progress you'd make in the last 20 hours of a 10,000-hour journey. You get the most bang for your buck right up front. Okay, so how do we make those first 20 hours count? How do we make them as effective as humanly possible? Well, Kaufman breaks it all down into a really simple 4-step framework that you can apply to literally any skill you can think of. So here's the game plan. First, you take that big, intimidating skill and you chop it up into tiny little pieces. Then you learn just enough so you can tell when you're making a mistake and, fix it. Third, you remove any and all obstacles. Like if you have to dig your guitar out of the closet every time, you're never going to practice. And then you just commit. You practice the most important little pieces for at least 20 hours. I gotta say, that first step, deconstruction, is everything. A goal like learn to program is just paralyzing. But what if you break it down? What if your goal is just understand what a variable is? Or write one simple conditional statement? All of a sudden, you're not trying to climb a mountain. You just have a few small, manageable hills to get over. Now, if you've got the 4 steps down and you want to supercharge them, Kaufman also gives us 10 core principles. You can think of this as your ultimate checklist for learning really, really efficiently. Okay, all of these are goals, but I want to point out a couple that are just total game changers. The first one is simple. Pick something you're actually excited about, something you'll love doing. But the most surprising one is at the bottom. Emphasize quantity and speed. In the beginning, forget about being perfect. Just get your reps in. Go for volume. And this quote right here, it gets right to the psychology of it all. That 20-hour commitment, it's really just a mental trick you're playing on yourself. Because when you hit that wall, when you get confused or frustrated, and trust me, you will, you don't quit. You've already made a deal with yourself to push through for 20 hours. And that's usually just enough to get past the hardest part. So what about the biggest excuse in the book? I don't have time. Well, Kaufman's advice here is pretty direct. He says to track your time for a day or two and find the low-value stuff. Mindlessly scrolling social media, channel surfing, and just reclaim that time. Finding 90 minutes a day is way more possible than you'd think, and that means you can hit your 20-hour goal in less than 2 weeks. All right, so that's all the theory, but what does this actually look like in the real world? This is the perfect example. Kaufman wanted to learn the ukulele for his daughter. So instead of diving into boring music theory, he deconstructed the skill. He found out that with just 4 or 5 simple chords, he could play thousands of popular songs. So that's what he focused on. And in under 20 hours, he was playing and singing. And really, this is the bottom line. If you take one thing away from this, let it be this. The hardest part of learning something new has nothing to do with your brain.
It's all emotional. It's about being willing to feel incompetent for a little while, because feeling stupid just isn't fun. The secret is knowing that feeling is coming, expecting it, and having a plan to push right past it. So let's go back to that skill you thought of at the beginning. You have the framework now. You know it's not some 10,000-hour mountain. It's just 20 hours. 20 hours of focused effort is all that stands between you and being pretty good at it. So the only question left is, when are you going to start?